Okay, so let's model this junction box. So what are we going to be looking at here? Let's take a look at our base feature, or at least try to find it in our drawing. And what I would suggest doing in our feature order here is thinking about the front of the junction box. We're going to start on the front plane. We're going to extrude that to the back with a draft angle on it. And then a little twist in that is we're going to take that surface back here and, extrude it one more time with an even bigger draft angle. 2 degrees on the first one, 3 degrees in the second one. And then we're going to put in our shell, our holes, and then we're going to put these tabs in the top and the bottom. That's kind of the feature order. But a little bit of a twist here. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this geometry back here once we have that draft angle in place. And we're going to sketch that surface back here. And we're going to convert the entities back there with an on-edge sketch relation. And we're going to extrude from there. So we're not going to have any dimensions on that sketch. Going to be kind of weird, but it kind of shows you the concept that you could use. Because to put dimensions on something like this in order to match the back of that face, it's going to be really hard with that draft angle. It's going to be really hard to get that really precise, and using that convert entities with the on-edge sketch relation works out really well in that situation. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's put in our drafter, our initial feature, which is going to be 120 millimeters tall, 85 wide. Then we're going to go ahead and do that, as I mentioned, convert entities on that. We're going to extrude that back. First one gets extruded back by 20. Second one by 70. First draft angle is going to be 2 degrees. Second draft angle is going to be 3 degrees. So let's keep that in mind. And when we get started here, we're going to use stainless steel AISI 304. And everything's in metric. So let's do this. Let's go to new. And I'm going to go ahead and choose my millimeter gram second file. And you might consider, you're going to open up your millimeter gram second pseudo template file, because the SolidWorks or the computers in the lab won't allow you to do that. But either way, you get to the same place. So we're going to start in the front plane, and we're going to go ahead and sketch this out. So sketch, everybody's familiar with this by now, center rectangle, start from the middle. Remember, we have 120 on this side, and then 85 in the bottom. We're not going to worry about the fillets in the corner. We're going to do that as a feature fillet in just a little bit. And then we're going to go to extrude. And you want to make sure that you're going to the back. So it's going to extrude to the front. We want to reverse the direction. So we're going to do this. We're going to go ahead and click on that arrow in our properties manager. Go in the back. We're going to make that 20 millimeters. Draft angle. Go ahead and click on that. We're going to make that 2 degrees rather than 3 degrees. And green check mark. We didn't do the material, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's head on our materials. AISI 304, I believe is what it is. Apply and close. So now we have that in place, and we're not going to check the mass properties, because I feel really confident that with this simple feature we probably have that in place. So we're going to scoot ahead a little bit. We're going to go ahead and click on the surface, and then we're going to go ahead and go up here to sketch. And to do convert entities, even though it's available up here, we can click on that all day long. It ain't going to do anything until we go over here and tell it that we want to sketch. So we have to click on the sketch button up here, and then we're going to go to convert entities. Now we're going to convert that. So all we have is on-edge sketch relations. Everything is fully defined. You know it's fully defined because it's black. We can take these corners and try to pull them. Can't do anything. If we were to put a dimension on this, you can see that we have a kind of a weird dimension in there with a lot of units after the decimal. And it's suggesting we make that driven. If we could do that, we can go to OK. It's going to be gray in the background, which means when this changes, that dimension is going to change too. But we don't necessarily need that dimension. We're going to go ahead and get rid of that. But that kind of shows you the complexity of the dimensions we'd have to put in there in order to match what's back there. And something that's similar to this too, we don't necessarily have to do the on-edge, but we could do this. We can go ahead and make sure we're normal this to the back. We could do another center rectangle. And we can actually take this line over here and maybe that edge over here and make that collinear. All we have to do is do 2 sides in that, and it does the same thing. Make that collinear. Now we have that in the same position, but a lot more sketch entities. Either way, it's probably just as easy. Maybe a little bit harder, maybe a few more steps over here to do it that way with the center rectangle, considering the existing geometry in order to get that fully defined. Okay, so let's do this. We're going to do extrude boss space now, and also we're going to go in the back. This time it's going to be 70 millimeters. We're going to do a draft angle, and this time it's going to be 3. Go to the green check mark. Bang. Now we can check our mass properties. Let's go to evaluate mass properties for our second step over here. If you look at a drawing, 6756.572 grams, which is what we have. And off in the Z direction only, by negative 4358. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. And that's going to be 4358.0. So let's go to our options in here and change our options up a little bit. We want to make sure that's all the way up to 3. Up. And you want to make sure your slider is all the way up to the highest too. You want to make sure it's up on the highest. So now it's 6756.572. And let's see if that matches our drawing in here. Let's bring that drawing back up. Yep, it does. And 43580, which is what we have there. Go ahead and close that out. We're going to go to the next step. Okay, so our next step, before we move on, always a good idea when you begin to model, go ahead and save it. Get in the habit of saving this early, so if you put in a couple hours worth of work between saving, and all of a sudden your computer crashes, you don't lose your work. That's always a concern. So we're going to call this our base feature for that first, for our first feature. We're going to call that base feature -1. We're going to borrow that, because I'm a slow typer, and sometimes I don't spell very good. We're going to call that base feature -2. So what's our next item? Let's go ahead and bring that drawing back, the one that's available on the website. We're going to do side fillets, then we're going to do our front shell. So our side fillets are going to be, let's go ahead and take a look at that and see if we can find that in here. It's in here somewhere. There it is. Side fillets of 8 millimeters. It's going to default to 10. So we want to make sure we get that changed. We're going to get the wrong mass values if we do that. Then the shell, we have a wall thickness in here of 3 millimeters. So that's pretty easy. So let's go up here to features. And we've done this before. We're going to go to fillets, and we're going to click out here in the modeling area and do Control A. Selects everything. Then we're going to go ahead and deselect that face, or that, not that face, but that edge, and this edge. You want to make sure your preview's on so you can see what you're going to get. And something we're going to go ahead and click to is going to be this little edge in here too. Don't neglect that. Although I checked the mass properties, it doesn't make hardly any difference in the mass properties unless you get out to about maybe 3, 4, or 5 units after the decimal in regard to precision. So once we do that, well, almost forgot, we're going to make that 8 millimeters, not 10. So it defaults to 8, we're going to make that, it defaults to 10, we're going to make that 8 and go to the green check mark. And now let's go ahead and go to our shell feature. We're all familiar with the shell by now. This is going to be 3 millimeters. Go to the green check mark. Now let's check our mass properties. So, remember the settings we had in there before, 3 units after the decimal, 957.608. So it's after our shell, we have 957.608. And off in the z-axis only of a negative 51.469. That's a negative 51.469. So let's think about that negative number in a y-axis. If we look at the center of gravity, which is that pink symbol in the middle, we're going off in the negative direction on the z-axis. If you look at the triad down here, you could use that triad and move things around too. If you click on that X, it's going to orient itself to the X. It's another way of orienting your model. But if you look at the y-axis or the z-axis down here, everything's going to the back. We extruded our first feature to the back and our second feature to the back. So the center of gravity is going to be in the negative direction on that z-axis. Okay, so let's move on. Just to remind you to save your work, save it often. Like to say about voting, save early, save often. You want to make sure that all your features are named by now. So if you've done that, let's go ahead and move on. So now we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go ahead and sketch some circles on this, but you want to make sure you don't sketch your circle profiles for the holes that we're going to be creating out of those circles on these faces. You want to make sure you use faces that are in the middle of our model so that they come out correct. For instance, if we were to sketch a circle on this and do a through-wall extrude on that, it's going to might have the right dimensions on this side, but by the time you get over here, the circles are going to be much closer to the back because of that angle. So the way you solve that, and the reason why you want to sketch in or model in with symmetry, with the planes right there in the middle of your model, and that's a test question. There's one advantage, and the advantage of modeling with symmetry in here, with the origin right in the middle, is you have planes in the middle too that you could use for very similar situations that we're looking at right now. So let's go ahead and take a look at our drawing and take a look at what we need to do. We're going to be putting in our top circle, and then we're going to be putting our side circle in order to create those top and side holes. So the top circle is going to be 25 millimeters in diameter, 25 from the back, 25 millimeters in diameter for the side circle, and 30 millimeters from the back. So that's pretty easy. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do the top one. So we're going to choose the top plane. We're going to go to sketch, go to circle. We're going to go normal too, so Control 8 in your computers. And we're going to exaggerate that. We're going to put that over here. Put a dimension on that of 25 millimeters, 25 from the back. So we're going to go ahead and choose that edge. You need to make sure you're normal to it, or you won't be able to choose that back edge. So we're going to make that 25 millimeters from the back. So another way of doing this, instead of putting a center line in here, which is convenient sometimes, here's an alternative to that. We can click on the origin, center of that circle, and with the orientation that we have, it's going to be vertical. So we're going to go ahead and click on vertical. So now you can see a vertical sketch relation between. It shows you in magenta the center of the circle and the origin in there. So once we do that, we can go to Features, Extruded Cut. We need to make sure we do that in both directions, so through all both. And watch this. We have a direction 1 box up here, and we have a direction box down here too. This is kind of new. Through all both, we'll go ahead and open up, not through all, but through all both. It's going to open up the direction 2 too as a through all. So direction 1 is through all, direction 2 is through all. It says through all both, but we can unclick that and it'll just go back to through all. But again, through all both goes off in both directions that you can see. And green check mark. So we're going to do something very similar to the right plane. We're going to go to right plane, go to sketch, go to circle, and we're going to sketch that out. Let's go normal to it so we can see what we're doing. We're going to make this circle 25 millimeters too. We're going to make that from the back. From that edge to that edge, we're going to make that 30, not 25. And we're going to go and click on that point and this point as an alternative to our center line. We're going to make that horizontal. Go up here to Features, Extruded Cut, through all both, green check mark. We have that in place. And again, feeling confident about my mass properties still. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And let's pull our drawing in here too. So we're looking at a mass of 910, 419 after our side hole. And it looks like 910, 419 here too. And again, off only in the z-axis, a little bit shorter, a little bit longer than the last time, a little bit further back. We're looking at negative 50, 898. Negative 50, 898 there too. So the last thing we need to put in is going to be our tabs. These are going to be the tabs are going to be in the top and the bottom. And we are going to call those, what do we call those? Our top tab. So we're going to model the top tab on the front, and we're going to mirror that to the bottom. We're going to put the hole in there first before we do that. Then we'll mirror it on the bottom. Okay, so we're going to put in our top tab and our bottom tab. So let's take a look at our drawing, see what we need to do. We can see a lot of the dimensions over here in our section A, kind of like the right view in a way, or the front view, the back of the front view, maybe the back view, but it is a section view here. So we're looking at 45 wide and 20 tall, and notice where that 20 millimeter dimension is. You know, we have a hole in the middle of that of 8 millimeters. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do it wrong first, and then we'll figure out how to do it right. So we're going to go and click on the front plane. If you remember, our front plane's right there in the front of our model, or we can click on that surface too as an alternative. We're going to go to Sketch. We're going to go to Corner Rectangle this time. We're going to go ahead and sketch an outline over here, over there, to that side, and notice the line is black. It's fully defined because that coincident relationship, that point only, is on that edge, and then we have a horizontal relationship from there. So everything else is blue, including the endpoints of those lines. So we want to have this centered on that edge. So if we right-click on that, we're going to go ahead and select that midpoint of that sketch element, that line in there. We're going to click on this edge. We're going to apply a midpoint relationship to that. So now when we move that around, it's got a lot of flexibility, but it's symmetrical about that midpoint. So now we're going to put in our dimensions. We're going to put in 20 over here. And we're going to put in, I think it's 45, so I'm going to take a quick peek over there. Then we're going to go to Features, Extruded Boss Space. We're going to go back, make sure we reverse the direction. We're going to make that 4 millimeters, and then we should be okay, huh? Maybe? Not really. If we look at this from the side, if you take a look at that, go normal to it, kind of scoot in. Uh-oh. We have a little gap in here, and sometimes SolidWorks will tell you that you're creating a feature with zero geometry to it, or zero clearance geometry, or similar wording, What that means is when you come down here to the point down here, it's unable to resolve exactly at that point whether there's a void there or whether there's substance there, and it doesn't like that. But it's not going to resolve itself very easily. And if you were to try to make something like this with that gap in there, it's just going to be impossible. So how do you fix that? Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go back to that sketch. We're going to repair that sketch a little bit. Let's go normal 2. Let's go ahead and take that coincident relationship that we have in here and delete that. Now, it's still got that midpoint relationship in here too, so we can't, even though we deleted that, the model is still not going to move. And we accidentally just created this coincident relationship here too. So we're going to get rid of that and get rid of that midpoint relationship in here. Now we got that flexibility. So now we're going to take this line rather than the point and this edge, and we're going to make that collinear. Now, this isn't going to be quite right either, because now we still have a little bit of flexibility side to side. So let's go ahead and click on that line, right-click on it, select midpoint, click on that edge over here. We want to select midpoint just like we did before. But now we have this 20 millimeter dimension. This is going to be kind of a trap. Remember, we talked about tips, tricks, and traps. Here's one of those traps. You have to pay attention to that dimension. That dimension actually is not from that point over here on that line. It's actually from this edge over here. So how do we change that? We're going to take that dimension and point in here. We're just going to drag that to its new location, which is going to be up here. It's going to be a different value. Not going to remember 20. It's just giving us a literal value back. We're going to go ahead and double click on that. We're going to make that 20. So now we have that in place. If we take a look at the dimensions over here in our drawing and take a look at this, now you can see that 20 millimeter dimension is from that top edge, 45 wide, centered, and then we're going to have a hole in there. We're going to put that hole in there just next. You know, we could do that here, but I like putting a hole in there as a separate feature because you could do stuff with it, like create a pattern out of it. If you do it in one single feature, which is a little bit quicker, that has an advantage too. So let's do this. Let's actually put that hole in there. Let's put that hole in place. Again, we're going to exaggerate that. We don't really have anything to select from here, but we can, off the sketch, we can do this. We can click on the origin that's in there, the projected origin, make that vertical. And then it says that the hole's centered. It's going to be 8 millimeters. So we're going to go ahead and put an 8 millimeter dimension on that. And it's going to be centered. So how do we center this? Well, one way to do that is to put in a center line, perhaps from this intersection here. Try to pick up the intersection relationship and go from that intersection up there to that corner up here and then drag that to the middle. That'll make it centered. And now you can see the preview. The preview is going to include that circle. So remember, if we're going to put the circle in a feature like this, two features into one, you can't do anything with that hole in there anymore. If you want to mirror that hole only, or if you want to create a pattern out of that, you'd have to separate that hole out and do that as a separate feature. So let's go ahead and rebuild it. We don't need to do another feature in here. We're just going to rebuild what we have. And now we got rid of that gap in here. Oh, it is a separate body. Boy, I didn't expect that to happen. So you can kind of see it. We don't see a direct edge in here. And we also see kind of a line that's being broken up here on the side here too. Sometimes you see that edge, sometimes you don't. So because that was a separate body before, when we had that gap in there, this was actually a whole separate body. It was completely detached from the other body that we had. And we'll talk more about bodies later, but this time we're going to go back to our Boss Extrude 3. We're going to rename that here in a moment. You want to make sure you merge the results. Merge result, go to the green check mark. Now it's going to incorporate that. And if I did Control Z and take a look at this, with that separate body, now we have two separate bodies in here. If we go to our Solid Bodies folder up here, which isn't always there. That folder comes up when we have separate bodies in our model. We can see our side hole model. It picks up the name of the last feature that is inside that body. There's actually the junction box here. And in the tab, we can rename this to our top tab. We're going to go ahead and do that so you can see how it shows up in the Solid Bodies folder. This is our top tab here too. So two different bodies. And the way we get rid of that is we go to our top tab, right click on that. We're going to merge result. And if we do that, now we have one body. Solid Bodies folder disappears. We only have one body, so we're okay. So Let's go ahead and get our mass properties in again. And again, feeling really confident about this. We're going to go ahead and pull that over here, pull our drawing in, and what do we have? Mass is 937,711. That's what we have over here for our feature or sheet notes number 7 item down here. And the Y, it's a little bit off now on the Y because now we're favoring the top. We're putting more mass in the top, so it's going to go off in a Y direction, in a positive direction. 2.036, 2.036, and a negative 49,475 in the Z, same as before. All right, now we're going to mirror that to the bottom. So, gosh, let's do that because that's a really quick and easy thing to do. Go to Features. We're going to go over here to Mirror. It's going to ask right away for a mirror facer plane, so we're going to go ahead and click the top plane. Remember, we want to maintain the symmetry of our model. So we have that plane right there in the middle. We're going to go ahead and utilize that. Features in the mirror, we're just going to go to our top tab. Again, this is an advantage of putting that hole into one feature because we only need to pick one feature to do that. And then we're going to go to the green check mark, evaluate, mass properties again. Let's go ahead and bring that back. And let's take a look at this. So 965,003 for our weight. And then the y-axis disappears now here again, as we did before, because we are maintaining that symmetry in the y-axis. And the z-axis, we're off by a negative 48,132, negative 48,132. So we have that. So we have our junction box. So remember from the beginning, we have 2 draft features over here. We had to convert entities in the back in order to get that complex geometry. We're just borrowing what geometry we already had, put that into a sketch, and we extruded that back with another draft angle. Put in our shell. Top holes, side holes, using the front or the right and the top planes right there in the middle of our model because we have the symmetry in there. Then our tabs. We did our tab on top with the whole feature incorporated into that one feature, mirrored it to the bottom. A little bit complex with that sketch, but we got it in place, and that's your junction box.